Hi, my name is Chef Nicole Brisson here at Resorts World Las Vegas, and you are listening to Ingredient Insider.
This is Ingredient Insiders. I'm John Magazzino.
And I'm Andrea Parkins.
On each episode of Ingredient Insiders, we'll be talking with chefs and food writers about their favorite ingredients.
We then speak to the producer of that ingredient. We talk about the history, how it's made, and why chefs love using it in their kitchens.
So today we are talking about a really boutique-y item from Italy, Andrea. I had never really seen this product until, Rolando Beramendi, who's our guest today from Manicaretti Foods, brought it in and showed us. And then, what do you think of this ingredient?
I mean, my first introduction to the ingredient was actually with you. So when I associate this ingredient with our trip together to Italy.
Yeah. So the ingredient today is Cruschi peppers. Am I saying that right? Cruschi?
That is correct. And Cruschi peppers, they're known as the red gold from Basilicata. Some people call it the red saffron from Basilicata. That's kind of how special these peppers are to that southern region. I think when I think of these peppers, I think about the movies where if someone is walking the streets of Naples and you're looking up at the apartments and you see the peppers strung from the apartments, John, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, those dried pepperoncino.
That is a Cruschi pepper.
Got it. But so that's the dried form of it. But then they take this pepper off of those beautiful wreaths you were just describing.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw it firsthand in Calabria a couple of years ago on a trip with Nancy Silverton and some other chefs, where they drop these peppers into hot oil just for a few seconds. They crisp up and then they get used in a variety of ways. I mean, it's a really great product and they're so delicious. I thought it was so amazing that when we asked our guest today, Nicole Brisson, the chef of Brezza restaurant in Las Vegas at the Resorts World Casino, she said, I want to talk about Cruschi peppers.
I was kind of surprised. I'm always anticipating what the chef is going to say they want to talk about. So to hear that, immediately my mind went to our trip. So I really cannot wait to dive deep with Nicole and our buddy Rolando.
Yeah, she's one of the, top young chefs. And I'm saying young, I've known her for a long time. She's worked in Las Vegas for many years, worked for some really great, celebrity chefs. And her new restaurant is amazing. And she's so passionate and so knowledgeable. So we're lucky to have Chef Nicole Brisson joining us today to talk about Cruschi peppers. And then on the back end, we're going to have Rolando Beramendi from Manicaretti Foods, who's one of the best, food discoverers, explorers in the world, importing these products into the U.S. and working with the Chef's Warehouse to talk to us all about the ins and outs of Cruschi peppers.
Let's do it, John.
All right.
This episode is in partnership with the Chef's Warehouse and produced by Gotham Production Studios.
We are in the heart of Las Vegas. We're right on the Strip, right?
Right on the Strip.
And this is a brand new casino.
First casino to open in 13 years.
Oh, wow.
Right, Katie? Yeah. 11 years.
11 years.
Okay. So we're at Resorts World, the Hilton Conrad. Am I saying all this correctly? And we're inside Brezza's
PDR, private dining room.
Brezza's private dining room.
Which is absolutely stunning,
with
chef,
with a chef I've known, although we haven't spoken in many years. Many years. I've known Chef Nicole Brisson when she was in New York, and we're going back almost 20 years. Is that how long you've been? You told me earlier you've been in Vegas.
Yeah. It's always hard for people to believe that I've been here this long. I basically drove my car from cross country from upstate New York, and I thought I would maybe be here a year, max 2 years, and I never looked back. I made Vegas my home and started the Win, worked for the Battaglia Bastianich group where we met for over 12 years, and basically started as a cook. And by the time we closed, I was the culinary director of all 4 restaurants.
Wow.
Incredible.
But you kind of grew up with cooking in your blood. Your grandfather owned a restaurant in Saratoga. Your mom had this garden that you mention a lot in your interviews. Like, kind of take us back to your upbringing. And
it's funny that I ended up in Italy because upstate New York to me is a lot like Italy in a lot of ways. You're cooking seasonally, you're living off the land. Where I grew up 40 miles west of Albany at the foothills of the Catskills. And we didn't have central heating. We just had a freestanding cast iron fireplace. So most of the summers were spent chopping wood and stacking wood. And my mom would can for month after month through the summer months. We had peach trees, we had strawberry pyramids, we had blueberry bushes, we had all the brambles that grew around our property. We had green beans, potatoes, squash, and she would can for the whole winter. So that when we were going to the school, waiting for the school bus the next morning, I would have a beautiful half piece of peach or pear that we would have in our cream of wheat that she had canned from the previous season. And it was really an incredible way to grow up. I don't think I actually tried fast food until I was 26 years old, which is kind of an anomaly these days.
Wow. I think that's pretty cool because I don't think a lot of people, if you say upstate New York, and I grew up in, southern, Andrea, you grew up in the New York area. I grew up in, just north of the city. But to equate upstate New York to Tuscany to a lot of people would sound like, they might shake their head and be like, I don't see that. But the way you just described it really does, as I think about it, makes a lot of sense. It's very much an agricultural area.
It is.
Which much of, if not most of Italy is. And you're like living off the land like you just described.
And I don't think I really appreciated it until I really started traveling. And then I came back one year. I was visiting for 4th of July. And I remember just pulling over on the side of the road and started taking pictures. And I'm like, I grew up with this. It's so incredibly beautiful. The Adirondack Mountains, Thatcher Park. Those areas are some of the most beautiful in their peak months,
Do you miss that living here in Las Vegas? Or are you too busy working all the time?
I always think when Vegas finally breaks me, I'll just buy an Airbnb in upstate New York and retire. That sounds like retirement to a lot of people. But, Vegas has really just become my lifestyle in a lot of ways. It's very conducive to the chef lifestyle. It's go, go, go. It's 24/7, 7 days a week. There's not one 24-hour period where something really crazy doesn't happen here, and I think that's what's always kept me really interested in wanting to stay here and wanting to grow. And it's really what sparked my and Jason's love to build this company together. My business partner, Jason Rochlau, he worked for Michael Mina for over 13 years, opening tons of properties for him, and they're best friends. And, the support we got from the community opening these restaurants during such a hard time was really incredible. It really made me feel like Vegas was home.
Yeah. What was that like coming from New York, like the first week that you were in Vegas? Was it like kind of a jolt to the system? Were you like, where am I?
Honestly, when I first moved here, I was working at the Wynn, and I went from small upstate New York restaurants to all of a sudden doing 500-600 covers a night. So it was insane in a lot of ways. It was very fast paced. A lot of the chefs I worked for were very eccentric. It was kind of like a fast track in learning, and it was incredibly lonely when I first moved here because it wasn't like the culinary network that it is now. It was really much, I just kind of put my head down. I worked. I wanted to keep going to the next position. So in my head there, I had these goals. I wanted to be one of the youngest female executive chefs on the Strip. And I accomplished that at 24 years old, and it was really quite, it took me a little bit to look back and say wow, I did this in a very short amount of time. But, I kept looking to the next thing and what I wanted to do. And I really got a ton of opportunity to grow with the Battaglia Bastianich group because Mario he taught me how to do so much. He taught me how to get in front of the camera, do press, do the reality TV shows. I did 5 reality TV shows in the time I think I worked for him. He got me into writing. He threw me into the dry aging program, and I owned that for Carne Vino for many years. And, just watching the success and the development of Carne Vino over the years, it was such an evolution. It became a family by the end of it. And it was really, people still talk about it in Vegas. They're like, when are you going to open another Carne Vino?
I want to talk a lot about Brezza, but before we go there, I want to talk, before we even came on air, you guys, Andrea, you guys were talking about, both you and Nicole, you both went to Johnson & Wales in Providence, Rhode Island.
Jay, what?
And how did you end up in Italy? Because I know you worked for some of the great Tuscan chefs. And
so this is a fascinating and complicated story.
We love fascinating and complicated.
Yeah. Tell us.
So I moved out of my parents when I was 14 years old. My older sister was 15, and she was in the business as well. So she had done the early program for Johnson Wales, where she went her junior and senior year of high school. I had entered a vocational program called VICA, and I became the president. And I started competing in baking and pastry, fine dining room service, and extemporaneous speech, because I figured they were all skill sets I'd need if I eventually opened my own restaurant one day. And I won about, I think, $15,000 or $17,000 in scholarships to Johnson Wales. So that's what really kind of solidified my decision to go to Johnson Wales, because I put myself through college and always worked a number of waitressing or bartending and just trying to make ends meet and pay rent and do all those things. And when I got back from when I graduated with my associate's degree, I remember doing a function that was like the holiday green sale. And Molly O'Neill had just moved into her summer home across the street from the restaurant, the farm to table restaurant I was working at.
Famous New York Times food writer.
Yes, she was the Pete Wells before Pete Wells.
Whose brother, by the way, is Paul O'Neill of the New York Yankees.
Yes.
Little known fact, but
yes.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And she said, well, where are you going to go now, Nicole? Are you going to go to France or are you going to go to Italy? And I just kind of laughed. And I said, Molly, I don't have any money. And she said, why don't the James Beard Awards are happening this week. I have Benedetta Vitali flying in and Faith Willinger flying in. I would really like you to meet them and some other prominent women in the industry in New York. And she's like, well, I want to help you. I want to be your fairy godmother. And she went so above and beyond. She took me to Bobbi Brown and bought me probably thousands of dollars worth of makeup at the time and taught me how to do my makeup.
So nice.
She took me to Ann Taylor because she said I couldn't dress like a redneck in Italy. And she dropped me off in the middle of Central Park. And she said, figure out how to get back to my Manhattan apartment, because this is what you're going to do when you're 21 years old and you move to Italy. So literally 2 weeks later, I never getting on a plane. I got on a plane and I landed at Cibrèo in Florence, with one of the toughest kitchens and one of the hottest new restaurants at the time, and worked for Fabio Picchi. And that was one of the best experiences of my career. You know, it really kind of paved the way for my Italian future.
What did you learn from him?
Oh my God, everything.
What didn't you learn from him?
So it was a really unique kitchen. You know, we had expats from all over. You know, they were Chinese, Japanese, Americans. So, I mean, it's kind of a very smart business model that wouldn't work to this day. But he essentially had people that all wanted to work for free and provided them places to live and food. And then sometimes we'd get some tip checks from the Americans that would leave tips on the table. But we would prep the entire menu that morning, and then we would take our siesta, and we'd come back and we would run dinner service until very late. And everything was made from scratch. It all came from the farmer's market right there in the piazza. And he was insane. I mean, he would break plates over people's heads and say, guarda me, like, look at me, you know? And he would always think there was something wrong with the potatoes that day or the parsley. And he, butta vita tutto. We'd have to throw everything away and we'd have to start over. And, you know, sometimes going into our siesta. And he was just very maniacal, but very, very involved in the political scene in Florence. You know, he very much in front of the camera and a PR dream come true. You know, he was very theatrical. He ended up marrying a different woman after Benedetta. When she wrote Soffritto. He then married an actress, and they continued to open Teatro de Sale across the street. And then he eventually did Cibrèo, which is a Japanese concept. And when I moved to Italy 20 years ago, there was no such thing as Japanese food in Florence. So it was really, I think he reminded me a lot of Mario Batali. Like, he was just very forward thinking. He
like
was
ahead of his, like,
always developing. And, you know, I mean, he was a restaurant in the middle of Florence that didn't serve pasta. Like, that was
unheard of.
Yes. but very steeped in those Tuscan traditions, you know, and that's where, you know, I learned a lot about polenta. I still make his eggplant parmesan to this day, and it's no breading. It's just thinly sliced eggplant, just really, really done simply with really great ingredients. And I remember one day I made it too salty, and he said, Chef Nicole, this is it's like a John Lennon song. You know, it's every step, every layer is the lyrics, and you know, I can never get him out of my head when I make it, because it's just he was such a character. That's
amazing. And then you said you went to work with Dario Cecchini, the famous butcher.
Yes, prior to, the restaurant closed in August, so I ended up at a vineyard called Castello d'Ama, and I did things like going pomodoro picking and watched their 3 kids, and just stayed in their villa and got to do some really cool stuff. And then from there, I was introduced to Dario Cecchini, who really became like my Italian dad. You know, he was orphaned relatively young and built this business from, you could tell. I remember the first day I worked in his shop, I wasn't supposed to start working that day, and I had capris and heels and a blouse, and he said, "You work for me." And he spoke broken English, and I said, "Well, I hope so, Dario." And he said, "You start now." So literally hours later, I'm on a 3-pronged wooden stool, stuffing soppressata up to my shoulder, and he said, "Okay, you're hired." But
classic.
That's awesome. Well, I do want to get a little bit, I mean, we should probably talk about the ingredient.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is Ingredient Insiders.
Right.
We might as well talk about the ingredient.
Oh,
because
yeah.
Nicole was passionate about wanting to speak about one thing in particular. So describe, first of all, why did you want to talk about Cruschi peppers?
So I first got introduced to this product by Nancy Silverton when I was with the group, and she serves them so simply with like just beautiful fresh burrata and piles of Cruschi's with a lot of extra virgin olive oil drizzled over it. And for me, it kind of took me back to like my family's Ukrainian, Czechoslovakian, and Polish and French. And it took me back to some of my mom's family recipes because it just sounds so Russian and kind of Polish.
Cruschi.
Yeah.
But it's such a unique, I mean, it's from Basilicata.
Mm-hmm.
It's, they're picked at their prime peakness when they're kind of bulging off the vine and they start to weigh down the plant. And when they're picked, they're then dried and then fried in very good extra virgin olive oil. And you can taste it. It's just got this nutty, aromatic, real crisp. You want to keep eating them.
They're almost like potato
chips.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like $18 a pound potato
Right.
chips. You're like, oh. But I've really kind of implemented them in a lot of different culinary preparations. I like to just crumble them over seafood pastas because it adds that pop of crunch and flavor. As I mentioned, any of the fresh mozzarella family, like burrata, anything it goes really well with. Even like a soft scrambled egg to finish, doing a simple spaghetti aglio olio, but doing it with Cruschi is a whole nother level because it adds a depth of richness and color and crunch and pop and,
Do you like to just break them up with your hand, or do you use a mortar and pestle? How do you break them up?
I typically but with my hand. You can get nice crunchy rustic pieces, but it would be interesting I have never actually done a powder with them, but that would be interesting to integrate into a dish as well.
Yeah, I read that that a lot of people are making it into a powder now, which I had never, I had only seen it whole or, kind of broken up.
Sure.
So I kind of wonder, how you could use that to flavor a dish and really kind of pack a punch.
Yeah, or even integrate into a pasta dough would be unique. Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back for that.
Okay.
Let us know. Sounds good. How would you describe, I think I probably not a lot of people maybe have heard of this.
Well, at home.
I think it's not super common here. How would you describe the flavor profile of a Cruschi pepper?
It almost has a really rich, nutty characteristic to me. It's not spicy.
Mm-mm.
It's very mild. A little bit, almost like herbaceous a little bit. I know. Yeah. But it's to me, it's unique. It's not what we were talking about Calabrian chilies earlier. It doesn't have that heat. It's just kind of a really subtle flavor that takes a dish to a whole nother level.
Yeah, and I was reading about the drying process, how they it is seasonal. So they happen, it's once a year. In the spring they plant it. In the summer they harvest. They lay it out on cloth for the peppers for 3 days, and then they hang it. And you'll see them in windows and garland. It's kind of like decoration.
Well, that's what fascinated me about my time in Italy. I remember Fabio one day opened up this secret, it almost looked like a little saffron box, and he was like, "Nicole, Vinny, look at this." And his father would dry, so pepperoncini.
Mm-hmm.
We think, unfortunately, Americans think of pepperoncini as those little packets that you get at a crappy
pizza
slice.
place. Yeah.
Pizza slice place. But they have no flavor. They're terribly probably out of expiration date. And in Italy, when you're using pepperoncini to mount a dish, to do a base of a sofrito or a sauce or a stew or any braising or anything, it's always a key ingredient in the base with the mirepoix and with the aromatics. And those pepperoncinis that they dry on the rooftops in Tuscany, his dad would make all the pepperoncini for the restaurant. And when he opened up this box, I remember me being from upstate New York, and black pepper seemed spicy at the time, and I started choking.
Yeah,
just from the aroma and the flavor.
Yeah, and it's very, very strong. But you just take a little bit, and it takes dishes to I mean, like you can't do a linguine and clams without real pepperoncini.
I'm glad you said that because it is so much of the commercial industrial pepperoncini that you get is exactly what you described. It's the stuff that's very inexpensive. It lacks flavor. It may have some heat to it, but then you go to Italy or you meet a farmer. Even in the United States, I've met some people who are growing peppers that are drying them, and it's a world of difference.
It is.
And
it
especially if you're talking about simple cuisine where it's like, maybe it's spaghetti aglio olio and it's like you got garlic, olive oil, and pasta, and you're going to put pepperoncini. You need to use a really good quality.
Yeah, I'm picturing like the shaker at the slice joint and like watching someone going like, and you're like, it shouldn't be that much. Like you shouldn't need to do that.
You shouldn't need that at all.
Right.
No.
And all that's doing is adding maybe some heat if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I'm still working off a bag this big that I brought back from Italy probably 4 years ago. So, and I turn people on to real pepperoncini all the time. I found this little hand-painted antique container for them that has an actual pepperoncini hand carved into it.
Have you ever tried to make your own Cruschi peppers?
I haven't, but that's interesting that you say that because I would like to, but I don't know if the varietal will grow here in the States. Do you?
Well, I don't know the answer, but what's interesting, Andrea mentioned that we were in Calabria, and what's also interesting too is you guys channel a lot of things together because we were with Nancy Silverton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you
Calabria.
said that, I was like, she was there.
And we were visiting a Calabrian chili pepper producer, and we had lunch, again, the classic Italian thing. We're in the countryside. We're right next to the pepper fields. And he starts heating up a vat of oil.
Like in his driveway.
Basically.
like an American would fry a turkey.
And
exactly.
he's got a big...
I'm like, what's happening over there?
A big pot of oil. And he took dried peppers. And I didn't know whether I assume they were grown in Calabria. They had to have been grown in Calabria. He wasn't importing from Basilicata. And he threw them right into the oil. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. What's the guy doing? And then as soon as they came out and he made a platter for us, and Nancy took one and Andrea, and we all ate them, I was like, these are
incredible
Cruschi peppers.
Yeah.
And so we always associate Cruschi with the town, Basilicata, and this town called Matera. But now that we're all sitting here talking about it in a little depth, I wonder if you can just get a nice dried pepper, throw it in the oil, and make these yourself. I don't know, because they are crazy expensive.
They are crazy,
we sell them,
crazy expensive.
Manicaretti imports a lot of them into the United States, and you get this, if you're a restaurant, you get a small bag. It's like, God, it's expensive. Talk to us about this restaurant because it's really special. It opened just this year.
Yeah, so we hit a year back in June, and we just hit our year anniversary at Bar Zazu 2 days ago, which was really exciting.
Oh,
congratulations.
Thank you. But it was a really tough time to open here in Vegas. Jason and I, we are very, very lucky that we have a great support system. We have Ernie and Bernie. Ernie Moody created the AAA slot machine and online gaming, and then Bernie was in the thoroughbred horse industry with Ernie back in the day. And
I want to meet Ernie and Bernie.
Ernie and Bernie. They sound really cool.
They are. And Jason came to me and he said, we've got this opportunity to open a restaurant on the Strip. And it was so palpable when we met. Like we were just both so excited talking about food, talking about building a restaurant group and what we could do. And it was so emotional, I think, for both of us on so many levels. And to kind of reflect back, and now we got Restaurant of the Year this last week. We got Best Chef this week. And, just some of the accolades that we've accomplished in such a short time has really been amazing.
It's a big week for you.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. Congratulations.
What I love, too, is that Spencer Rudow, who's our sales manager for Chef's Warehouse here in town, as soon as we said, we're coming, we're doing podcasts, we want to talk to a chef, he said, you got to talk to Nicole.
Like immediately. Like boom.
Had such nice things to say. And I said, oh, I know Nicole. He said, yeah, we got to talk to her. And then we're talking to another friend of mine who I've known for many years, Mark Andelbrat, another chef.
That I've been to Italy with, yep.
Okay, and he was like, we were talking and said, Mark, we'd like to get you on the podcast, and, who else should we be talking to? And the first person he named
was you.
And he said such nice things to say about you. And the food. I mean, talk to us a little bit more about the food and like we walked by this wall of wine, which was spectacular.
Great wine program. We have Miklos Katona, who came from the Win originally, so we our backgrounds parallel quite a bit. And he's just really created mine and Jason's dream come true list. It's all the Italian varietals that we love. And the food was such a great experience for me to put it down on paper, because what I really wanted to do is give back and give homage to all the great people in my life who helped kind of structure my career. You know, Fabio Picchi, Dario Cecchini, Mario Batali, Zach Allen. Bill Benson was the first owner proprietor of the Palmer House Cafe, the farm table restaurant I worked in upstate New York, and he's still like a father to me this day. We just cooked out of his organic garden in upstate New York. And I really took all those influences from working with these great chefs over the years, and there's a little piece of them in every dish. You know, the little tomato gelée that's in the center of our caprese, that's something that I would make for the antipasti every day at Cibrèo every morning. And some days it would set, some days it wouldn't, but we've perfected the recipe. The carne cruda is definitely kind of half influenced by Mario, half influenced by Dario. Dario would start every morning with big glass of red wine and a handful of raw meat, and he said it was the secret to a long healthy life. And you know, unfortunately, Fabio passed this right quickly before we opened, and I had to open my own off the strip restaurant prior to open these that I'm no longer part of. But right when I opened that restaurant, Molly had passed. You know, and you start getting older. You know, I can't believe I'm in my 40s now. Like I used to be the youngest person in the circuit on the strip, and now I'm the old broad.
It happens.
But it's really, I wanted to kind of give back to all the people who taught me and spent their time with me, because I think education and I think mentorship is so important in our worlds, because, you know, a lot of the people that end up in kitchens, they come from really spotty backgrounds, you know,
Sure.
and including myself. You know, I came from very little up, a very frugal background, and if it wasn't for these people, I probably wouldn't be here today.
Wow.
So awesome.
Do you do a lot of mentorship yourself, and, you know, taking externs and, you know?
Yeah. So I used to teach, or I used to do the mentorship at La Cordon Bleu when it was still here in Las Vegas. I did that for many, many years and judged their competitions. I speak at CSN. I typically speak at UNLV at least once a year. I've been unfortunately too busy these last couple of years, but done numerous women's boards here in the Valley. I started the Slow Food chapter. I'm an executive board member of that. I'm on the culinary board of 3 Square.
So you're like really busy?
Sometimes.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of downtime here.
Even like in the very short amount of time we've been here, which has been like 3 hours, I feel like Vegas is having a little bit of like a moment.
Well, this is
it's you guys are here at a record time. So
Right.
I mean, like I said, I've lived here close to 20 years, and just the development. I think COVID did some really great things for us. It really elevated our local consumer. You know, we have tons of people who have moved out here from New York City. They've moved out here from San Francisco, from LA, including a lot of my upper management staff have relocated from other cities. And it's really been great, because what it's done is it's given us a great people with open mind and people who really want to be part of the development and the future of Vegas, which that didn't exist back when I first moved here. You know, people were moving out of Vegas just as quickly as they were moving in. Now we have a network of great culinary professionals that own restaurant groups. They own their own independent restaurant. I'm supporting them on my weekends. You know, Jamie Tran from Black Sheep, Brian Howard, Sparrow and Wolf. He just opened Half Bird. You know, Gary Lamorte started his own restaurant group, another ex-Mina guy. And, you know, it's really been great to see the evolution of Vegas in a lot of ways.
And there's a real community here. I mean, it's not just people from, we've talked to other chefs about this. It's not just tourists and out of town people coming to eat. There's the local population.
The local
is
circuit.
just,
What kept Jason and I alive in the beginning months. You know, I mean, it was still very much COVID, and then we had Omicron hit, and you know that was devastating. And we're just looking at each other some days. I'm like, is this gonna work? And now I think we're really. I think we found a really great groove, and you know the hotel has supported us in so many ways, and you know we see the foot traffic back, we see the conventions back, and all the private dining, and it's been really, really amazing.
well, congratulations.
Awesome.
Yours is a beautiful story. I mean, it's really great.
I have one final question.
You have one more question?
One more?
Yeah, okay.
So you sound like super busy, so I don't feel like you do a lot of cooking at home.
I actually do.
You do? Okay, this is great. Everyone says, no, I don't, you know, whatever, but this is great.
No, and trust me, I do go through periods of time where I wish I could cook more, but I really, buying a house here in Las Vegas was a game changer for me. I have a great backyard. I love to entertain. My neighbors who helped me find my house, they're very much food connoisseurs, and they love the business, the industry, and hearing all my crazy stories of the Strip. But it's been great. You know, we just had a local butcher shop open here called Feather Blade, and that's typically my go-to. I'll get a cut of meat, and you know, we'll sometimes theme the dinner parties. We just did a whole king crab, and I had some ramp butter that I brought back from upstate New York.
Nice.
And just for me, it's therapeutic.
Yeah.
You know? And when you get to this level on the Strip, and now Jason and I are getting ready to open our third restaurant. Ideally, I'm not on the line every day. You know, we'll have to get the restaurant up and running, but I'm still going to need to like have that creative instinct to want to cook at home. And ironically, I still cook a lot of my mom's Ukrainian and Czechoslovakian dishes from growing up, you know, borscht and pierogies and, you know, hershli and all those things. So,
well, maybe you're going to have a really unique answer then.
Well, you know what I was thinking, because she said she loves to entertain.
Yep.
She's got all these great ingredients, and we don't have dinner plans tonight. So if you're not too busy, we can invite ourselves
come
over.
to your house.
Well, one thing I forgot to mention, I don't know if Spencer told you this, but Brezza would not have existed if it wasn't for Chef's Warehouse. We tested the entire menu out of the Chef's Warehouse test kitchen.
Oh, and here in Las Vegas. That's amazing.
Opening.
That's awesome.
It was either my home kitchen or Chef's Warehouse. So
well, that's why we build those kitchens. In each of our Chef's Warehouse, which Nicole's talking about, is in most of our warehouses across the country, we've built test kitchens for R&D, but we also have those as open kitchens for exactly what you just described. A chef that's getting ready to open up a restaurant can come and use those spaces to test. So I'm glad you took advantage of it.
Oh, it was.
That makes me really happy.
That's amazing.
Yes, it was a game changer for us. So thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, but we'd better let Andrea ask her question because when
I know you have to go.
She gets hangry, and then we have a big problem. We have to take a break. Everybody has to step away. All right, Andrea.
So,
you want a drum roll? Okay, go ahead.
So you invite me over. I go into your pantry. What are the 5 pantry staples that you must have at all times?
Arborio rice, extra virgin olive oil, aged balsamic.
So fast. Wow. You no. Okay.
Faro. I always typically have faro for some reason.
Okay.
And strangely enough, tahini, because I really like hummus.
There you
Great.
go.
I love it.
That's a unique one. Amazing.
Great answers. And yeah, you didn't have to think at all.
No, some chefs are like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, seriously? But
this has been truly, I really, to hear the story about Molly O'Neill, what she said to you and kind of took you under her wing, and then having, who wouldn't want a stepfather like Dario Cecchini in Italy. To hear your story has been amazing. I am so proud to be here in this space to see the fruits of all your labor after many years kind of come true. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, and what you're doing for Las Vegas and the culinary scene is incredible. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks for having us.
Of course, thank you.
And I can't wait to come eat here, Andrea.
Brezza at Resorts World Casino.
I want that bottle of Gaia Barolo.
All right.
Thank you.
You're paying.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Bye. Well, we've got our first repeat visitor on the show.
So exciting.
Joining us from Florence, Italy, one of our favorite people in the food world. Really, one of the foremost food experts in the world. And that's not an exaggeration when it comes to finding Italian products, creative items from really anywhere in the world, but especially Italian products. Rolando Beramendi from Manicaretti, which is one of the great food importers in the United States and a good partner of the Chef's Warehouse. Rolando, how are you?
I'm happy to hear both of you very much. I'm so honored and humbled you asked me back.
You're an expert, and we always want to hear from you. And I know I'm speaking for Andrea and myself when I say we wish we were there in Florence, Italy, with you right now.
100%.
But at least we can see you on video.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about something that's really unique.
Very special.
Really wonderful. It's called Cruschi peppers from Italy. And I don't think a lot of people know what they are because it's a really small production.
I learned what they are by being in Italy.
Yeah.
I had never heard of them in the US.
So Rolando, what exactly is the Cruschi pepper?
Okay, so do you remember the first time you had a bowl of pasta and somebody grated some Parmesan cheese on it? Then
grandmother,
you went a little bit further south, and then somebody put some other things on it, like chopped parsley. And then you went to Sicily for the first time, and somebody sprinkled some toasted breadcrumbs on it.
Yes.
There are people in the south of Italy that sprinkle crunchy peppers on it. Why do we always have to put Parmesan cheese or anything that is cheesy on pasta or on anything? So I was always bemused by it all, because I think that what happens is that you add not that, it's another texture, is that thing of crunchiness or a layer of flavor that you never tasted that before. And it shouldn't be on pasta only. It could be on a soup, or it could be on beans. It could be on anything. But why do we always add something that is so prescribed? And I'm sorry to be so pontificating.
No, I think, I mean, is it generational that like...
Well, I want to go back a sec. Is Cruschi, does it translate to crispy? What is the word Cruschi?
It does to a certain degree, because the Cruschi are basically pepperoni di Senise that are, from the south of Sicily or Calabria or Puglia, Basilicata, that are, we all think about sun-dried, but what we're talking about here is shadow-dried. You have to let them dry in the shade. And
why is that?
Because I think that they dry in a very different way. Okay. They develop a completely different flavor. They develop a flavor that becomes almost like chocolatey. I can't explain.
Richness to it?
Yeah, but it's like mole, right? Like mole in Mexico becomes this very intense layers of flavor. So, mole is to Mexico. Here's Cruschi peppers, and
they're not spicy. They're not hot, right? They're
not at all.
Spicy.
Not at all. It's chocolate. I think it tastes like something that nobody has ever tasted before.
Very unique.
I have a couple of things I want to ask. One is, I've always associated this product with Manicaretti in the United States, bringing it in, and also the town of Matera in Basilicata. But Andrea and I went to Calabria a few years ago, and we were visiting with one of our suppliers who actually is in the pepper business, the Calabrian pepper business. And we had a nice outdoor picnic lunch. And he fired up a large frying pan with oil and threw in these dried peppers, which I don't know if they were Cruschi or not. And they crisped up almost like potato chips. And we were eating those like a snack.
Yeah, I think they actually sell them like potato chips.
Were those Cruschi peppers?
Yes, they were.
They were. So in Calabria, you have these. Why do I always associate the town of Matera with it?
There's something about that whole Colombian exchange. Is that thing of like the tomatoes and the potatoes and the, everything that came from America to Italy. It transpired from the relationship between Spain and the southern Italy, right? So Sicily and the south of Italy. So all these products, all these beans and all these things became part of what I call it, the Colombian exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And everything grows differently wherever you are. It's called terroir.
Do you know like the origin of like how it came to be that they decided that these peppers were going to be fried versus?
Well, I have a question. Are the peppers, when you open a package of them, right? They come in a bag.
Mm-hmm.
When you pull them out, have they been fried already, or they're just dried?
They've been fried.
They've been dried and fried, and then they're in the bag. Okay.
They're like ready to.
They're ready to eat, like a potato chip.
They're like potato chip. Yeah.
But
And
I'm
you know,
wondering, like,
that's
why
a
that pepper is that
masterful,
way.
it's a masterful art of how you can, it takes 7 seconds. If you spend 8 or 9 seconds burning, you burn the pulverize.
So when you're frying it, 7 or 8 seconds. I remember when John Paulo was making them for us, it was very quick in that hot oil and then right out.
And so good.
So you mentioned kind of crunching them up and sprinkling them over pasta. What are some of the other ways that people should be using these?
Oh, can you imagine them, you know, like breaking them up and, you know, breaking them into a paella?
Wow, yeah.
Why would you? I mean, it's like paprika to the next level.
Yeah.
What I love about Cruschi is that you're giving people a crunch. You're creating a bite. So if you can break them up with your fingers and break them up on a swordfish with olive oil or a seafood stew. What about pork roast, right? And as you are sending that dish off to the table, you're crunching it, and it should be all uneven. And you're creating this texture, crunchiness that I don't think anybody can give, because it will never be the same. It's
also got a beautiful color to it, like a deep burgundy red almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So you're adding texture, you're adding color, you're adding flavor. It's really
and you know what, Andrea? It tastes like chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
It tastes like something like an incredible chocolate element to it that it's unlike, and we're all addicted to chocolate, right?
Yeah.
But
which makes me think too that you could add it to onto a chocolate cake or any kind of pastry
really
application, because it's
that
would be really good.
Yeah.
But why do you think? I mean, and I don't know if I'm wrong in saying this, but I feel like they haven't had their true moment yet in the States.
I think it's a tiny production.
I think that what it would be really great is that you guys that are in the conversation with the greatest chefs in the world, in the United States, it's like, think about it, it's all about crunchiness. I think that we all need to have this texture. We have to like bite, right? So why does pasta need to be always with breadcrumbs or Parmesan cheese? Why don't you come up with something that will topple, and make an amazing texture? So if you're going to have linguine alle vongole or clam chowder, why don't you put some Cruschi peppers on it? I mean,
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I love a little.
It would be so cool. Crunch, crunch, crunch.
But I will say this: they're not inexpensive.
No.
There's a lot. Obviously, the process of drying them, the process of frying them. There's a lot that goes into this.
The thing is that people, how should I say this in a very elegant way? The process of growing them and shadow drying them, because they're not sun dried, they're shadow dried. So they're put into these incredible colors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in my cookbook,
Beautiful.
right? So they're like necklaces. And they're like people, everybody has to like embroider them. And then you let them dry in the shade, not in the sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
So
that explains a lot about why they really are a precious pepper.
absolutely. And they have to be
why they're so
one of a
expensive.
kind, because they have to be perfect. They're selected by the mom, right? And she embroiders them into this necklace and lets them sit and dry in the shade, not in the sun.
Is there only the way you're describing it? Is there like one farm or or is there a lot of farms in that area that are doing this, and then collectively they're drying them together? Like, how does
No,
this
it's not a
season work?
consultant. No, it does. I think that these are the kind of traditions that people are figuring how to preserve it for the future. So one of my favorite things making, while I was researching everything about my book, it was to put crunchy peppers on these broken peppers on anything.
Rolando, I want to hold up your book so we can see your
It's
book.
all about texture, right?
Authentico. It's such a beautiful book. If you
But
don't
the
have
thing
this
is
one,
that-
add it.
But my thing is all about if you're eating beans with anything, like, can you imagine crunching with your hand right before that dish goes out to service?
I think it would be a cool concept for the chefs that do it with the oregano branch, and it's almost like
exactly.
Great idea.
Yeah.
do that.
People
like
love
tableside.
textural stuff too.
Yeah.
Malden salt, when you crunch
Mhm.
the flaky sea salt in your fingers.
Yep. Even
I got to get my hands on some of these Cruschi peppers.
Cruschi
Cruschi.
peppers.
I'm a firm believer that texture makes you want to eat and bite more. So that whole idea of like crunching something before you send that out to the dining room, it is delicious. It's a spark of something that is like fireworks in your mouth. So
This has been
that's why I love it.
awesome. Been so fantastic. So if you don't own the cookbook Authentico by Rolando Beramendi, get yourself a copy, because there are recipes that include Cruschi peppers. There's a beautiful photo of the Cruschi peppers in that braided bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Rolando, we cannot thank you enough.
Thank you so much.
This has been wonderful.
And if you're a chef and you're dying to try Cruschi peppers, just call your sales rep at the Chef's Warehouse. We'll get you hooked up.
chefswarehouse.com and Manicaretti Foods.
Thanks, Rolando.
Thank you so much, Rolando. This has been
see you soon.
awesome.
See you soon in Florence.
Ciao.
Yes, ciao.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Ingredient Insiders. Follow us on Instagram at Ingredient Insiders. You can find the products we discussed on today's episode at chefswarehouse.com or at your favorite specialty retailer.